That's where I think you just did a mic drop too. Like,
Yeah.
so true. Like, that's concise.
Who's our website provider? No, I'm just kidding.
Their website provider is Welcome Back to the Rounds with SCMD, where we dive deep into the data, tools, and strategies that move automotive marketing forward. I'm your host, Sean Rains, and today I'm joined by the two superstars. Well, there's many. They're all superstars at SCMD, but CEO and Superman, Mike Donovan, and CTO and Robin, maybe?
Oh, yeah.
Cody Jerry. Love talking to you guys. Welcome back to another episode. It's so fun to have these conversations with you guys because you just think differently. You deliver content that is actually really meaningful and totally on the center of the bullseye for your audience. And so it's always good. And I'm looking forward to today's conversation because, audience, we're talking about like how to make your website actually usable. It's going to be a little bit of a teardown. Think about all the pages. Now, don't say, oh, I know about all that. No, because you don't. Nobody talks about what really needs to be done and how you should be getting the most from your dealership website in this context. The website providers will never talk this way, right? Because it's just not part of the way they want to go to market. It's not the way they want to get your attention if you're a dealer. But companies like SCMD are positioned perfectly to talk about this so that you do get the most. And to be quite honest with you, it's not just to the benefit of dealers. It's to the benefit of the website providers as well. It makes them look real good. So the website providers should be really delighted to have people that they get to partner with or that their own dealers are working with when it comes to a company like SCMD. So guys, welcome back to the rounds. Let's start with, what's the first step? The first step when somebody wants to evaluate their website's usability.
Well, in my opinion, one of the things that I do, first thing I do is treat it like you're trying to buy a vehicle yourself. So I pick a vehicle that I could possibly buy, which gets me in trouble because sometimes I buy it. Either way, I go through the full experience. So I completely remove myself as a vendor or anything of that nature, and I jump into it, and I just find a vehicle that I'm going after, and then I start figuring out exactly what type I want, and I start going through all of the pieces of the website to be able to utilize, to be able to make that deal. That includes calling the mobile click-to-call or the different things of that nature. So I use my cell phone to be able to do a lot of the shopping since there's a lot of mobile use these days. I also use my desktop just in case there's some things that are slowing it down, and I want to double-check to see if it's just using mobile or if it's also on the desktop. But from my point of view, the first step is just using your website the way that a consumer would. And so turning yourself into consumer. And anytime anything pops up that feels a little confusing, slow, or unexpected, you just figure it out. Then you start pinpointing what the issue is there, start troubleshooting that, and start working through it.
I think that's really smart because a lot of people forget that you should just put yourself in the shoes of the person who's actually going to use it, right? And you should probably do that on a pretty regular basis, 2 or 3 times a month, I think minimum, just so you actually don't feel like you're going to get taken advantage of by people that might know more than you. You should know how that asset is working and why it's working that way or not working quite so well. What do you think, Cody? What's your first step?
Oh, man, Mike's first step is probably the golden ticket for most people. On top of that, I'd probably build the engagement reports inside of GA4. We talked a bit about them on the last episode, but looking at what CTA elements people are clicking on by using the element text parameter that's within ASC standards. So adding the ASC CTA interaction with element text so you can see which of those call to actions people are clicking on. I think that's pretty critical. And it gives you a non-biased opinion on it as well. Like, it's really easy when you're going through the website to kind of get opinions. And if data backs up those opinions, then you know exactly what your next step is.
Yep, I think that's really, really wise. And yes, the previous episode, for those who haven't checked it out yet, literally turned into multiple 8 or 9 specific walkthroughs on how to reclaim all the things out of Universal Analytics and build things in GA4 that I think 99% of dealers probably don't even know that you can do. So, love those. Those are both really great answers. Let's talk about maybe the place where you want to make sure that you're winning on your dealership website, and that's the homepage. And for the sake of this conversation, we'll call them best practices as if they truly are. Like, these are the things that you should do that are going to get you best outcome. What would you guys say are kind of in 2026 the best practices for the homepage of the dealership's website?
Well, I think that the homepage has one job. It's to get the shoppers to the right place quickly. That's always been the goal, is just get them as much information with the least amount of effort possible. The biggest mistake that we see that's a really common thing in the auto industry is everybody using these banners and this OEM messaging and all these things. And I get it. They got to jump through the hoops to be able to get the co-op money and that types of stuff. But it creates something that Cody taught me about that's called cognitive dissonance. And it makes it to where people are not able to get to where they got to go because they're almost thrown off the scent due to using these things.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah, and people are addicted to banners and all these different things, and they just feel like having them there is going to create this awesome opportunity. But the fact of the matter is, people are coming to the site for something specific, and they start seeing all these other things, and then they lose track of what they're actually going after.
Yeah, I like that you also, you briefly mentioned, the co-op programs. Most dealers, their OEM is in some type of managed program. And this is not us bashing on programs. But it is really important for dealers to understand that sometimes the consequence of holding out for co-op dollars in the grand scheme, it doesn't pencil. And I don't think a lot of dealers do the math on that sometimes. We're like, well, hey, this is co-opable, so it's $2,500. Like, yeah, but the consequence of that choice might result in a loss of $250,000 over the year or more. I mean, those are the things people need to think. Yeah, it can be tremendously significant. So I think that is an important little detail that I always like to say when you guys are burying leads, I like to dig them back up and mention them really quickly. But Cody, what are your thoughts here on best practices?
Oh, I'm just loving that Mike mentioned cognitive dissonance. So there's a TED Talk about cognitive dissonance, which this woman does a presentation about jellies. And she does one day where she brings, I think it was 6 jellies out, has people sample them, and then they see how many people buy jelly. And then she does a different day where she brings out like all the different flavors where you can test all of them. And what they found was when he had like 20 plus options, like nobody bought jelly. But when they had 6 options, lots of people bought jelly. Because when you have like one strawberry, one blueberry, one whatever, like people will actually go through the process and find one they like. When you have 6 different strawberries, nobody buys it.
God, now I'm hungry.
Sorry. That's such an awesome reference for this, because it is so true. When you have 13 different banners, you have 3 different search widgets, you have all these different things like trade now, buy now, lease here, buy here, like all these different options. Like Mike is completely right. It creates cognitive dissonance. People just don't choose. So I like to just simplify things. I think a search widget up on the top left, and I put on the top left because when you go to mobile, that means it's going to be the top widget when you go to mobile. I think that's super critical. It looks old. It looks old school. Like most people don't do this because it's kind of an old design. But the impact, we've seen people's conversion rates go up like 30% off of just changing that. And it shouldn't. Like there's no rhyme or reason why it would. But we tested it. It's been effective over and over and over again. It directly impacts sales because people now have a center point. They'll use a search widget, go to the search results page, go back to the search widget, go back to the results page, and that's how they're going to use your website to shop. And Mike's other point earlier was site speed. Like if you have a fast homepage because it's short, and that's usually the other problem. There's so many pictures and it's so dang long. Like you can have a really good user experience bouncing back and forth like that. Another thing that we see often is people replace the search widget with buttons just like new vehicles, used vehicles. In theory, I love that, but the search results pages tend to be so slow because there's so many banners and everything loading that, so many scripts, banners, widgets. it is just not that good of a user experience because it's so slow compared to other pages. So I don't recommend replacing your search widget with like new vehicles and used vehicles. I would keep that search widget, and if you are going to put those buttons, put them down a little bit lower, because I think that helps.
Yeah. Those are all really good recommendations. You want to win on the homepage, right? Oftentimes it's where people put most of their traffic, and most of it is not free. They're actually paying for it, either through an SEO provider that knows what they're doing, you guys do, or their paid media efforts. It jumps them off in a place that has to win. And if you're losing at that page where you're actually getting so much traffic, it's room for improvement. Dealers like, I just want to sell more cars. Okay, well then probably making sure that this homepage is fine-tuned and then keeping up with that on a regular basis would be put in the critical category. And I love the cognitive dissonance conversation as well, the fact that you guys address things like that, because you guys know this. There is literally science and psychology behind too many choices. As soon as you actually offer the third choice, the mental fatigue, I mean, people nowadays, it's like we're overloaded. We are overloaded with information, and it begins to break down people's ability to actually make the choice, make the decision. And how many times have you heard that in a conversation by a website provider, or really anybody even like that you guys would consider your peers in the industry, where they're having that conversation with the dealer so it illuminates something that is going to significantly make a difference. Don't put 10 banner sliders, hero images on the top of your website. People don't even really see maybe 2 of them at the best. Like opportunity is wasted by just loading that up. And then you guys also mentioned the fact that most of those are actually implemented in a terrible way, and they're very heavy, and they load down the page and slow down the site and compromise conversion all over the place from the beginning. So love that. Like, let's talk a little bit more about that, like the problems that you guys are finding on search results pages.
Well, so here's a super important thing that I've learned from Cody as well is once a shopper reaches the search results page, this becomes the most important page on the site. And so that's one of the things that we do when we're searching for website providers. We're trying to find someone that we can utilize custom SRPs so we can put the right amount of information in there to help people shop. So what they're doing in their shopping behavior, there's a lot of hip hop in between looking at the SRPs and the VDPs. And so anything that slows that down, it's just pushing them in a different direction, and it just compounds. So you do it enough times and they're gone, and you've lost them, and they're already ready to buy. All you got to do is give them the right opportunity. And so if you have anything that is cluttered or slow or visually blocking, you're putting friction between them directly in their buying process. So you're just shooting yourself in the foot.
I don't disagree. What are your thoughts, Cody?
We had a store that we worked with. It's been a while now, but throughout the month, I'd get a phone call saying we don't have enough leads. I'd go to the website. Somebody added a banner at the top of the search results page. I would delete the banner. The next day, they'd call and say, we have way more leads. A couple days later, they'd say, we don't have more. Our leads slowed down again. Go to the website. They had a banner up at the top of the page. And there's this game we played for months and months where every time they reported that we don't have leads, it was because somebody put the banner back up at the top because they convinced them as useful. But it was so tall that when you went to mobile, you couldn't see a car anymore. Like the whole purpose, the only point of visiting that page, looking at inventory, was gone because all of it was below the fold. So I would say the first thing I do almost always is delete that banner. It's not a huge improvement in conversion. Like if somebody lands on the search results page, you may have like a 1.5% conversion rate. And deleting that, you may go up to 1.75. That's still like a car deal or two a month that you could be losing just because you put a banner that you didn't know where else you're going to put it on top of the page. And that happens all the time, from either the OEM level, where it's pushing different things you have to advertise on your website, or a whole bunch of these tools that are going to recommend, like, hey, if you want more people to click or go to this page, you should put a banner here. And it's not a good user experience because it's not something they expected. And it's not good because it slows down the page. It's not relevant, like so many reasons. The other one, I think both you, Sean, and Joe Webb, like a decade ago, mentioned this, where people want to be able to filter by colors. And not every website has it, which to me is just so crazy. It's such an easy filter because some people truly just want like a white car or a black car. Like we even see it in searches. Like we have a couple of pages that rank specifically for colors on certain models because a lot of people want that color in that model. And I would make sure you always have a way, higher up in that filter too, because you don't want it above make or model, but right there, by trim, I would have color.
It's astonishing that there are actually sites out there that don't have that in 2026. I mean, because I can, often candid. I like to just say it's candor. I'm not trying to be overly constructively critical of website providers, but there are so many things that they are responsible for improving for the last 20, well, really since website providers came into existence, but let's call it almost 20 years, that things that should have been changed or updated or improved are still not. And that always blows my mind because what replaced it is usually people chasing things, aesthetic things, usually banners, video headers, all these other things that you're really selling to it's ego. I won't say it in a negative way, but you're selling to ego on like how this is, you're impressed by what it looks like without any understanding of if it actually has any positive benefit to how well you're converting the traffic or if it's actually hurting it. And your example, Cody, is perfect. It's like that happens all the time. I also, listening to both you guys and your answers, I thought, think about all of the companies that have something that doesn't exist on its own but needs to be added to a dealer's website. There's a very long list of vendors like that. And they're all competing. It's almost like, when I grew up playing Little League, the outfield walls were just plastered with as many local businesses that could be out there. It's kind of like that, where everyone wants to have a little piece of their real estate that does their thing on the homepage, but doesn't want the responsibility of how it might actually catastrophically affect a whole bunch of things downstream.
Yeah, no kidding.
Speaking right to that. So very, very interesting. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about the VDPs, that to people that don't know the industry and they've never heard that acronym. It sounds a little gross, but it's your vehicle detail pages. Let's talk about that. What do you find to be important when we're talking about the VDP?
Well, here's the thing: is people think about it the wrong way. They don't think. The thing with a VDP is if you treat it like a profitable business, it'll respond as one. So by the time someone lands on a VDP, they're no longer browsing. They're now evaluating. They're getting ready to find the way to be able to make the purchase. So the big conversion killers are like too many calls to action, hidden pricing. When the price is buried or CTAs can make the shoppers hesitate. Hesitation will kill the deal. And it's just being very matter of fact with it and giving them what they need to be able to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
I mean, it's serious. It's true. Like that's where people are making their decisions and finding a way to pull the trigger.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It's one thing to get them to your site, but if you get them to a VDP and lose them, man, like VDP is almost like, well, you guys have stated this before. There are a couple of providers that like to emphasize how well they perform at the SRP, but that's, I think, a minority group still in automotive. The VDP is still the place, like you say. If you get them there and you've overwhelmed them with all these way too many calls to action, making the pricing, hard to find, all of that, and then you lose somebody, turn them off, and they got to the VDP, that should be a signal of like, we got a problem. We got a big one. Like, Cody, what are your thoughts on VDPs?
I agree with Mike. The pricing and the CTA stack are like the most important parts. We tend to remove a lot of CTAs. Somebody on our team is very adamant that you should only have 2. In today's world, I don't think any of these widget providers are going to agree to only 2 CTAs on the platform, so we usually end up with about 4. So really figure out what you want and what you need, and you go back to those GA4 reports again to see what people are clicking on those pages. The other things that we see are things like small photos. There's one website platform out there where if we use a program like Hotjar to record somebody using the website, every single time somebody gets to a VDP on mobile, they are zooming in on the photos over and over and over again, and the photos will not get larger on their platform. I don't know what it is in the code. every time you zoom in, the rest of the page will zoom in, but not the photos. The photos always remain small. So that's always the biggest flaw we see. And when we adjusted it to get them slightly bigger, conversion rate went up with it. So, evaluating, just like Mike said, use it like a real consumer. If you can't tell what's in a photo, or if you care about heated seats and you want to zoom in and try to see if there's heated seats in that photo, if you can't, then the customer's just going to be like, this sucks. On top of that would be CTAs that overlap, especially on mobile. And, coming into this, I wasn't going to say names, but one is just stuck in my brain, and I don't think there's any way to get around it. With dealer.com, when you scroll down the platform, they have a call to action or like a phone call button that will appear and disappear. However, the chat widgets don't react to that search widget or that bar that pops up at the bottom of the page. So we often see chat cover up over the call option on there, or just like completely cover it depending on what kind of chat widget you have. And on top of that, they use the accessibility tool as well. And sometimes all three of those are battling for space. And you don't really, if you are going to use an accessibility tool, you don't want it to be covered up. That's a really good way for somebody to be like, I don't think they're that accessible. Whereas if you don't draw attention to it, then, this isn't legal advice, obviously, because there's lots of things to do with accessibility, but don't make them overlap. I don't know how, essentially what you have to do is ask the website platform to remove a widget like that if it's going to get covered up. So you can make something that will show up on the bottom left instead, because the chat companies are almost always going to take the bottom right. So you'd have to just completely replace it. And there's lots of different tools out there that you can add, or even today's world, you can use Claude Code and make your own widget if you wanted to. So there's lots and lots of options for that. But with CTAs battling over each other, especially on mobile, we tend to see phone calls go down, like less people are clicking the call or actually calling the dealership. In chat, if it gets popped below that widget because somebody increased their Z-index, because on websites, there's 3 different dimensions, and the Z-index is how tall something is. You'll just get less conversion. So it's really, really important to make those clear and concise, and don't make the consumer have to fight to try to contact you.
Mm-hmm. Your website isn't supposed to be a virtual funhouse, right? So some people think it is. It's not. That's what actually makes you lose the conversion game. You don't want to do that. Well, this has been really good on the homepage already. Let's shift into another page that often is neglected, but there are some different ways to go about what you would want to do with your dealership site when it regards specials pages. Do you guys say go with the OEM page, maybe the website vendor has a page, or is maybe even something completely different?
This is just like what I was talking about on the VDPs. You got to treat it like a profitable business, so responds as one. The best specials pages that you're going to see are the ones that match how the customers shop, not how the vendors are packaging their templates. So, and this is where you're going to have their intent match your trust, or this is where you build the trust with them. And so you have to have the right opportunities for those people, and make it set it up in a way where you can see everything in one spot. You don't have to go into too many different tabs and that sort of thing. And if the page doesn't convert or a guide action, it doesn't belong. So the biggest part is always monitoring and making sure what you're using is actually working, utilizing data.
Yeah, can't disagree with that. Anything to add on that one, Cody?
Yeah, we had an interesting situation recently where the specials page is a completely custom specials page. It's completely managed by the dealership itself. Like somebody wrote them code and they just update it every single month. Experience-wise, it does fantastic. SEO-wise, it does fantastic. I think a lot of these different lease pages tend not to rank as well as they could. We even have like a global incentives page that outranks a whole bunch of the lease pages in a market, like a major market. So, SEO is always kind of ignored on these to an extent, which is unfortunate because it can rank. There are people searching for lease deals and finance deals and things like that. The thing I would actually add on to it is make it easy to use, which I think is exactly what Mike said. If I'm going there and I'm looking for, let's say, an EQE lease, if I can't easily and quickly find all the EQE leases on that page, then it failed. And it has to be in a way where it's not like, you have to scroll down to find them. Like, it has to be a quick and easy button to click and jumps down to those particular incentives. I can clearly see what the terms are because, I've leased a bunch of cars, but not every consumer has. And they may hear that lease is good, lease is bad. And you have to not only sell them on the price, but the whole process as well. And depending on the dealership, sometimes their process is really good because they do lots of leases, and other times it's not good. But I would also include that, like, what is it to lease a car here? Like, what do you do? What's that experience look like? Because that's almost never addressed. Back to the original question, make your own or find somebody who's doing something different, because the OEM page, like, a lot of them are just not that functional. And I get it. Like, having something that will be pushed at 1,000 dealerships' websites and function correctly, I don't think I'd want to develop that. And they have to and try to make it functional, and it just never will be. So I would make something custom or find a company to partner with that has something new that they keep testing, because it all goes back to testing. None of this is concrete. It's going to be a moving target forever.
Mm-hmm. Those specials pages really have always needed to be a much more customer-focused environment that makes things easy, just like you guys are saying. And it's interesting in an industry that's been so hyper-focused on the customer experience for the last handful of years. It seems to be an easy card for a lot of vendors to play. Like, we're going to help with the customer, whatever. But the specials page is one where it never has really felt like people, it's starting at the OEM level, that they're focused on what's the customer experience. Are we actually just putting roadblocks in front of people? Are we keep them in the virtual fun house when they're actually on a page that should do all the things that you guys are talking about? So I love all of that. Let's move to service. Always seems like a second thought on websites. I don't know why fixed ops always ends up in that place. Actually, I have a few ideas. We won't talk about them on the on the rounds today, but for sure, it's true that they're always kind of a second thought on the website. What do you guys do to try to improve them? How do you coach dealers on how do you improve that service page?
Well, what I would do to improve service pages is trying to be more clear than clever. So it's being direct. You don't have to do weird labels and weird things. Label it schedule service. Make it very obvious. Make it consistent. And make it the first thing people see on the desktop or mobile when they come to your service page. So you don't want it to be cluttered, or because they're dealing with so many other sites that are so cluttered. It's hard to find where you're supposed to set your appointment, what things cost, all that kind of stuff. Just make it clear, concise. Just be straightforward and answer the questions. Don't try to be clever, in my opinion.
No cutesy stuff. Just get to it.
Cutesy. No cutesy.
Yeah. Oh, what about your thoughts there, Cody?
Oh, I mean, he's so right. We so often see it labeled as like service center instead of schedule service or something other benign. That's just as benign as that. So schedule service right in the menu, right when you're going anywhere, so people know this is the next step. It's so critical. Like, you can't even be downplayed to the sense that, like, if you're ignoring that, then you're missing out. The other part would probably be more of an SEO recommendation than a usability recommendation. And that's with AI search. If I get like a service engine light or something, some light on my car, I'm going to be searching for what that is. And I don't necessarily think that you should rank nationally for what that light means. Like, we have pages that do rank for that, and they generate thousands of visits per month and do nothing for that dealership. And they want to keep the page because, it's thousands of visits. It looks good on their reporting, so they keep the page. So I'm not recommending like making pages for every single one of those things, or even just the engine lights that pop up on your car. But having an explanation of that within the service page itself, lower down, I think if you put it into a table that's HTML and some CSS to make it look a little bit prettier. So it doesn't, it's not heavy. It's very functional. It's very useful. And if somebody's searching for, grinding noise, right wheel well, or right wheel even on a Ford Maverick, then you have a shot if you have a really well organized table about what services you offer. so that you may be able to find more customers that way. And just in general, like normally all you see on car dealership websites are oil change and maybe tires.
Yeah.
Like you don't know if they do batteries, tires, brakes, lights, alignments, like all that stuff that should be filled out so you know exactly what they offer. But also you have to have it in a way that's really well organized, because a lot of the times it's an iframed in widget, which that was probably an unintentional shot at some companies. It's just not organized well. And we see that a lot of times when we look back at the engagement rates and stats from those pages, like people won't dwell on them very long because there's just a lot of blinking, flashing things that aren't necessarily doing anything when they want to schedule service and they want to know that you can actually do the service they want.
Mm-hmm. All great points, and it actually just reminded me of my own personal experience this morning because I scheduled an oil change on my truck, and I hated the experience, but there's only one Toyota dealer in my town, and I don't want to drive an hour to the next one. So I suffer through their terrible service page and that whole experience. Hopefully they'll listen to this episode. They need to. They need it bad.
Their website provider. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding.
Their website provider is, you guys would laugh, so we will keep it off of this particular episode. So, and we were kind of discussing this before, but as you look back at the pages we've talked about thus far, and Cody was just sharing a little bit about this around useful ways to employ AI. So how would you maybe change your answers at all to address AI search?
Well, how I would change my answer to address AI search is first mention that we have done these things for our dealers that have asked for it to be able to come up for the AI searches and being able to come up on all the AI, any of the search engines through AI. And we haven't been able to, we come up for them, we're successful at ranking for all of them, but it doesn't move the needle. So I'm not super sold on it, but we do know that AI search increases the cost of sloppy structure. We know that. If bots and users are landing on a deep inside your site, not at the top of the page, I don't know, the layout will matter more than ever. So you got to make sure that the pages are written and structured by both human and machines, so people can understand the intent and action plan.
It's very well said. Anything to add on that, Cody, or from your perspective?
Oh man, I'm going to get out over my skis a bit on this. On January 13th, Google announced, or at least declared, that there is now universal commerce protocols that you're supposed to follow for AI search. It's just announced. I guarantee nobody's following this thing because, we're probably a month since it was announced when we watch this podcast. So it's changing. And what the universal commerce protocol is supposed to do is make it easy for bots to know what services you're offering. And it's supposed to be part of Google Merchant Center, so it may not even be truly associated with service. But if it does find a way into automotive for service, which we'll do our best to do just because we like to do crazy things like that, it will allow those AI agents to be able to tell you what services are offered at those dealerships. And that goes back again to partially how you lay out the page. So having proper HTML with div tags saying, this is a section about oil changes. That way, if an AI agent wanted to land you on that section, it could. If you don't put div IDs on there, or just IDs, it's difficult to have a link go directly to that spot on the page. So making the code easy so that a bot can drop you on the right spot if you are, locally trying to find something that does a certain service, like that would be the only change I would make. I wouldn't get crazy with adding, tons and tons of content, just like Mike said. We had a dealership go from 1,000 prompts that was relevant for to 2.6 million and didn't make any additional money beyond what they would have made in a normal December. But it sounds cool, right? I mean, 2.6 million prompts, that's amazing. So we're not sold on it. We do it if asked. We have a process that, clearly works at making you show up in lots and lots of prompts. We don't push it. We don't anything with it because if it's not going to make somebody money, we're not going to push something like that. But I would lay out the page with IDs on it so it's easier for a bot to pick it up if it were going to. And this is a changing dynamic. ChatGPT is supposed to have ads here in the next couple weeks for the free version. So we're right in the middle of this changing. So at the moment, doesn't really seem worth it. I would probably add some stuff to the page, like those div IDs, so you could do a little bit better when it pops up. But in the middle of February, it could be completely different if those ads take off. We'll see. They're supposed to be at the very bottom of the prompt or the result that it writes for you, so it's probably not going to even get viewed. But we'll see. It's a changing dynamic. Not worth it yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, the only constant is change, right?
Yep.
Especially in the AI world. Wow. What are some of the
being
problems?
relevant on Google? That's the constant. Being relevant on Google.
Yeah.
It's always been the same ever since I was learning from listening to you.
It has been, and it's funny how many people are trying to, like, it's the Pied Piper leading people away from, the cornerstones, and it still is one. I mean, massive amounts of search traffic, tons of people who are not AI literate. They're not going to be finding their new vehicle experience through AI. For the people that are there, it's, you guys will probably relate to this. A lot of times when I hear people talking about this, especially around this AI discussion, where it lands in search, and I think that people feed off of like loving to confuse their audience because it makes them look smarter or looks like they've got something. But when the internet first dropped on all of us, we knew at that time exactly the profile of person that was primarily online, and it wasn't parody. There wasn't parody by men and women users, rural communities, all of that. It was, we know exactly that most of these guys are probably in their 30s or 40s. They make a decent income. Like all of that stuff is documented from back in the early days of the internet. And if you were smart enough back then to make sure that you were tailoring whatever your content was, which no one was thinking that way back then, but if you were, then you were much more on the nose, but a lot more likely to actually throw that dart to the middle of the board. But now it's like, okay, we're kind of in a similar thing where people are talking about AI like crazy with the expectation that the general and broad audience that are actually using it are made up of all the same people. It's not. It's a very similar thing about who is actually kind of on the bleeding edge, learning and playing with AI and understanding it. And here we are, you guys, at the vanguard of trying to educate your customers and your prospects that are not yet customers so that they actually have real world knowledge to work with. Because it is one thing that's also constant is there will always be nefarious, I used to call them jackwagon vendors, that I don't know if the intent is there. I think with some of them it is intentional, but the way they go about it, the way their salespeople talk about it, these are not people that have ever done these things themselves. They really don't understand the mechanics. They don't really understand how catastrophic some of these things can be because they're still it's like a trial. It's a test. We got to experiment a little bit. And unless you frame it up that way, that we're all still figuring some of these things out, boy, you can lead people in the wrong direction. And again, I say these things all. Yeah. I say these things to compliment you guys all the time, but it's because this is the way you approach the business that you provide and the services that you provide for people is with candor, but also with that intellectual honesty that comes from your experience to say, absolutely don't do that. Here's a bunch of stories of why you wouldn't, and we've already seen it 100 times, so we're going to save you that pain. But it's also the same thing where it's something new. It's like, this is worth testing this territory and figuring out what really works and what doesn't work. But you need to know that part of what you're budgeting for is to figure that out. Like sometimes the exploratory nature of these things needs to be explained to the customer, which is something that you guys do so well. I think it's why people appreciate that. The relationship that gets built is one that is trustworthy. So, again,
it's off track a little bit, but the efficient communication is really important. Rather than it being, we have some competitors that have been side by side with us for so long, and then certain iOS updates and stuff pop up, and they start falling off the radar and different things like that. And then next thing you know, they're offering SEO to clients, but then offer them GEO in addition to SEO, and you're like, oh crap. Now they're starting to go a little crooked. That means that they're starting to let greed take over rather than really trying to do what's best for the dealers. And it's tough for me to watch. And it's just people that, they're good humans, but then they get caught up in the greed and it just pushes them the wrong direction. And that's not doing the right things for the right reasons.
That happens over and over and over. And in that case, what you're describing, Mike, that is even what I love to call is like all the vendors that are a solution looking for a problem. Those are people who literally are intentionally misrepresenting something for their own financial gain, for their own wealth building, for their own, really what it ends up for people that do that a lot. It's all about the profitability and what those numbers mean to investors and the potential exits and all that kind of stuff. Which is typically unbeknownst to the end users, to the dealers, which is, I mean, it's terrible. It's just terrible. Well, so what are some other problems that you guys find on dealer websites these days without, bringing them up? And it's okay that you mentioned dealer.com. I used to mention things constructively. None of this stuff is, you guys don't come from that spot where you're trying to tear people down. It's all constructive. So what are some
one of the most
problems?
reliable website platforms out there in addition to that? I mean, they have some issues, but they've been, believe it or not, we never thought we'd be saying dealer.com is one of the more reliable ones, but they have been. That's the fact of the matter.
See, there you go. Counterbalance.
Boom, boom. But, some of the things, the problems that we're seeing on dealer websites these days, and this is across the board, is jarring experiences. So irrelevant title tags, unnecessary microsites, forced digital retailing tools with no reporting, and then language mismatches. And this happens a lot with the OEM providers. It's where you're being forced to rank for pre-owned vehicles when people are searching for used vehicles. And I know that the intent is where Google is focusing these days, but it's just that mismatch on language can cause a little bit of confusion, and that can really slow you down on your conversions, that type of thing. So it seems small, but combining all those things together, it'll crush your conversions.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Anything to add on that, Cody?
No, I mean, he's 100% right. Those jarring experiences are probably the biggest problem that we see day in, day out.
Mm-hmm. I think I've mentioned this with you guys in conversation before, but do you remember the old website, googlefight.com?
Yep.
Googlefight.com was, maybe it's still out there, I don't know, it's probably a place just to harvest advertising dollars these days, but it would take these two stick figures and they'd fight it out, and you basically entered a keyword like Red Sox, Yankees, and then it's just going to go and query Google and find out how many instances there are. And I used to use that to show dealers, let's look at pre-owned versus used cars. And it would just annihilate, and they would be entertained by it at the same time. These days, I would just tell people, go to this free tool called Google Trends. So for dealers or anybody else that thinks, no, that can't be, just go to Google Trends and look over the last month, look over the last 5 years at pre-owned versus used, and then go back to your OEM and say, why? Why do you hate us so much?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a comment on that, actually. We, for one of the OEMs, they said we're not allowed to use the word car dealer. And I was like, people search for this OEM car dealer over and over and over again. Like, it is the biggest volume phrase. And we went to the dealer and said, this is ridiculous. Like, I know you got a strike. Well, let's get on the phone with them. Like, here's the data, why, here's the results of that term. And the dealer sent it to him, and the OEM gave him a pass. They said, you know what, you're right. We took away the strike. You can use it. And it was like so shocking that happened within 24 hours. It's like the only time I've ever seen a strike get removed, even though I don't think it was worthwhile in that case. And then be like, nope, you're allowed. Nobody else is, though.
Of course. Mike, you mentioned like a jarring experience, and I think I want you to unpack that a little bit. What is, for the audience, what does that mean to you?
Well, a jarring experience happens when a shopper clicks something expecting one outcome and gets another. So shoppers train themselves by visiting multiple dealership sites, and when the expectations don't match the behavior, like click availability, and then all of a sudden it throws up a freaking digital retailing tool so that it makes it to where that you're obviously trying to get money rather than giving them the information they're asking for. As soon as the trust breaks, the conversion drops, in our experience.
That's where I think you just did a mic drop too. Like, so true. Like, that's concise, right?
And there's a real world one from Mike just a handful of days ago. It's with one of the digital retailing tools, and because the website platform that's being used, and it's one of a very, very, very new one, they're not allowed to do their inline tool for it. And rather than like doing cloaks and daggers, it's Roadster. Roadster normally has an inline thing that they can do. In this platform, they're not allowed to do it. And yeah, you click check availability, and it brings you to a brand new website with a brand new page and a brand new VDP and a new button that says check availability. Like, holy cow.
Yeah. Wow. It feels like Groundhog Day.
Yeah.
Like, what are we doing here?
Okay.
What are we doing here? Well, so I think as folks listen to this, they realize, maybe they don't, but this is a mountain of work to do the first time, let alone something that you're doing on a monthly basis. So my question is, do you guys work through some sort of workflow, a checklist, a breakdown of how a dealership or a person at the dealership, or maybe they don't work at the dealership, but on behalf of the dealership, can do all of this more effectively?
Well, the first thing you need to do is just chill out, because people get so overwhelmed because they just try to fix everything at the same time. You got to just take a break, relax, then go back and start creating the list and going through and just working it 1 week at a time. So I've set this priority list up just to keep things a lot more simple. And then, you can have more longer explanation, that kind of thing. But the first week, what you want to do is test your VDP CTAs to make sure they work on both desktop and mobile. Like what I was talking about earlier, treating them as a profitable business so they respond as one. And then from there, the number of times we found a phone number as an old tracking number is far too many. So just make sure that all your phones are working, all your phone lines are working. You also want to test your menu links. Make sure that there's no broken links. Like I said, you don't want to have like stop points for these people. You want to keep them moving at all times. And you want to remove anything that isn't like a menu, something that's going to help out the menu. You also want to test your homepage and the search widget. And if you don't have it, then you can add one. Just make it easy for someone to find the correct vehicle fast. That's the key. You always want them to get to where they're trying to go in the least amount of clicks possible. So that's just the first week. So the first week, you're just doing those things. Then on the second week, you want to test your call to actions and phone numbers again, because it's really important. It seems tedious, but you need to make sure those things are always working. Those are the things that cost you money. Then you visit your new and used search result pages with your mobile phone to scroll. And then that way you can test your call to actions. Recently, we found a website that would open a form every time you try to scroll the page. It turns out it's just a digital retailing tool, but it was just super sensitive. And so you just got to make sure things like that are not happening. Every time something like that pops up, you're losing people. People are getting off your site and going somewhere else because it feels spammy. And then keep you staying on your mobile phone. See if your vehicles are visible and when new and used search result pages load on your website. So we often find that too many banners, we've talked about this already, but too many banners or different things pushing people in the wrong direction, or not. It's just hard to be able to have things up there that actually match up. Like having the exact banner for every single person that comes to your page is almost impossible to have. So you have to be able to have people be able to navigate where they got to go quickly and easily. And it's going to be scary getting away from those banners. I get it, but you got to do it. It's costing you money. So that's the important things, just cleaning things up on the second week, double checking all the things like the phone numbers and all the links and that sort of thing, just like you did in the first week. And then the third week, do it again. You test all your call to actions and all your phone numbers and that type of thing. You also need to make sure to test your Google business profile links and phone numbers. This is an extension of your website, as you all know. It's super important. It's one of the most valuable things these days, and things can break all the time over there. So you got to make sure you're staying on top of that and making sure everything is going well. You also want to visit your specials page to make sure you have specials listed and that you have a call to action besides see inventory on them. So it's always a soft close though, when you can. So putting a call to action with a form is a great way to pick up another couple conversions. You don't want to go overboard. Obviously, we talked about that already. You also want to visit the service pages for both desktop and mobile to see if the call to actions work. The schedules work, the scheduler works, that nothing is cut off on the sides from being responsive, and that you actually tell people why they should service with you. You know, and like I said before, just not cluttering it too much. So then visit your About Us page. That's a really important page that people sometimes neglect. But make sure it has a why buy messaging, some accolades, and why you're a good business. AI bots like the About Us page, so you can also get improvements in AI by improving this page. So that's similar to the way you used to be able to optimize YouTube videos back, or even SEO back in the day. But so on the fourth week, guess what the first thing is you're going to do? Test your call to actions and phone numbers again. You always test them, because if they're not working, people cannot get a hold of you. You want to evaluate your GA4 reports to see if the current trend of performance from your forms, calls, widgets, tools, all that kind of stuff, and set up new listing for the next month. Testing is important. Always be testing everything, making sure all your links are good, making sure that people can get where they need to go. And you always want to add notes in your GA4. And that's a good way to look back and see what's been done and see what's working and what's not working. So that's a quick 4-week process. But you could be going through, just the main first part that you do every single week, guaranteed. Just set it on your calendar and just get it done.
Yeah, that's a great walkthrough, Mike. Those are all, that you probably just laid out a little 4-week plan with sincerely a concise, some of it being repetitive, but how important it is one where it's like you can't afford to get into that kind of lazy mindset of like, or even letting other people do it. Sometimes the wrong people are actually responsible for that. So that's 4 weeks of really good advice. So I think that everybody watching the episode, you just go back through and make some notes here. Make yourself a little checklist. You just go back through what Mike was talking about, and you've got a nice, clean, little easy checklist. Do it yourself a couple times, like walk through it, or whoever, if you're not the person responsible for it, it's a good place to actually spend some of your time with them to make sure that you're very, very aware of all these things. I know that sometimes people think that talking about the website and how to tune it up for a great performance is like, we've been there, done that, because it's the primary digital marketing asset. It's the collection. It's the place where everything matters. But because it's the first tool that existed, it's the first digital asset for most dealers many of them before paid search even existed. There were a lot of dealers who, their first website came before October of 2000, which is when Google AdWords was born. And so there is a need for this type of, it's not even contrarian thinking. It should be the mainstream, but there's a need for this to be talked about in a way that reminds people that just because something's existed for so long doesn't mean that it doesn't require attention, and it's critical. It's critical. You lose so much when the site doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And if you were to do the math on how much you spend to get people to that place, it would make a lot more sense as to why making sure that you're winning more than you're losing there is worth every second of your time and the investment of your own personal understanding, let alone your ability to execute it on your own. So I don't want dealers to think from this that all the things that we are talking about and all this awesome stuff that you guys are sharing is, well, you've got to go do it. You're a dealer principal or you're a GM and you're got to go do it. It's great if you do. It's way better as an operator if you actually have that understanding of this part of your business. It isn't rocket science at all, but it is critically important. But it does mean that also the people that might be responsible for it, maybe they're the ones that are asleep at the wheel on your behalf. And I think if you're paying somebody to do this, they probably should be following a plan like this. So really great layout there. This has been a great conversation, guys. I would love to know if you guys have thoughts. If you guys thought, like, whatever dealer watches, listens, watches probably, remembers one thing from this conversation, what would you guys say that should be?
Staying consistent on testing your site. Make sure that if you were going to try and buy a vehicle, you could do it very easily. You could get to where you need to go as quickly and effortlessly as possible to be able to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to close that deal if you wanted to, in my opinion.
Love it.
I would say this isn't lip service. Mike has an internal process for us that is very similar to the list he just gave. So take all this and act.
Yeah, for sure. Well, listen, guys, once again, a fantastic conversation here on the rounds. I love making the rounds with you guys. It's fun to be the host and talk to a couple of guys that we've known each other for so long, but it's just so easy to have these conversations. But more importantly, I like the conversations because they're helpful to the audience, the people that you make this content for. So I'll be a little promotional on your behalf as we wrap up this episode of The Rounds. Huge thanks, Mike and Cody, as always, for breaking this down. It's like a mini teardown of the website across a few of the most consequential pages for dealers. And I say it a lot, but there's a difference. There's a difference in the people out there. If you're listening, you should be listening. There's a difference in who you choose to have help you solve some of these problems. There's a difference in how much people truly care, whether it's just surface level because they want your business, or they'll literally take your call at 10 o'clock at night and fix something before you wake up tomorrow. That's important. And so these are the two guys that I get to talk to on the rounds, and they represent a company full of people that are absolutely dedicated to the exact same mission. If you found the episode useful, helpful, especially if you're consuming on YouTube, make sure you hit the subscribe button. Then you'll know every time SEMD puts out new content on the page. If there's a place where you're consuming clips from this, like those, share those with people that you think will be helpful. If you're in a group, especially, it might not just be your store, but maybe there's 10 others that all need to be talking about this across whoever the website providers are. Extremely helpful. And if you're not connected with SEMD and specifically Mike and Cody, I always tell people go first to LinkedIn. You can just look up Search Engines MD, you'll find the company page. Then you find all the people, just click on that people link. You'll see all of them and then get connected with them, because one thing that's really important for dealers to win, it's been this way since the dawn of digital, and that is having a trust network. You need a circle, even if it starts with one person. They could be a vendor, they could be a fellow dealer, they could be anybody. But if they're the person you trust because they tell you the truth, they should be part of that network that you can actually take things like this, share, work it back and forth, and then you know what's going on. So I highly recommend that you connect with both SEMD's company page, Mike and Cody, and really everybody else over there. Make sure you get connected. And guess what? Until next time, we just say thanks to you for spending some time with us. We never want to waste it. So thanks for making the rounds with us. We'll see you again real soon.